What is up, guys? We're back with more picks and predictions. This weekend, we have the absolute last UFC card of 2024. It's a fight night in Tampa. It's Colby Covington versus Joaquin Buckley in a 5-round main event. That fight does matter to the welterweight division, especially if Joaquin Buckley does get the win. He is on an absolute tear. This is going to be his 4th fight in 2024. He's coming off that KO of Stephen Wonderboy Thompson in the 3rd round, which was really good. And yeah, now he's going to fight Colby Covington. If he does get this win, he's definitely up there in that title picture for the division. So great main event. And then after that, the card is decent. There's some cool fighters on here. We get to see Navajo Stirling's UFC debut. He's pretty hyped up. We got Manel Kopp on the card. We got Vitor Petrino, who was super hyped until, Anthony Smith kind of fraud checked him. But we get to see if he can get back on the hype train this weekend. We also have Yoel Alvarez, who I'm a big fan of. A really good Spanish fighter. So a bunch of good fighters on this card. Let's go and recap UFC 310 and then hop into the picks and predictions for this weekend. Hopping into the recap for UFC 310, we had an absolutely amazing card on the betting side. A lot of these fighters did do what they were supposed to do last weekend. We went 3 for 4 on bets. Our biggest bet of the night was 2.5 units, which is quite large for one bet for us. That was a futures bet that I had for quite a while, and I think that's where you catch a lot of value in UFC. There's a bunch of fighters across cards, and on sportsbooks like DraftKings and BetOnline where they have early odds out, these parlays are pretty beneficial where instead of specifically finding spots on specific cards, you could parlay a 2-leg that I was pretty confident in, which was Jon Jones and Movsar Evloev. I was confident in Evloev. To be honest, his performance wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be. Aljo did do a lot better, but I think people also underestimate how good Aljamain Sterling is. He was a former champion. He does have wins over people like Peter Yan, and maybe the first fight, you can kind of say that win wasn't real, but the second fight, he definitely went out there and put in a good shift against Peter Yan. So, good fight over there, but we had a 2.5 unit bet on Jon Jones and Movsar Evloev. That hit, obviously the Jon Jones leg hit on the UFC 309, and then in UFC 310, we cashed the slip in for 1.72 units in net profit. After that, we had a half a unit bet on Battles moneyline and Pantoja's moneyline. Brian Battles' weight miss did, make it a little bit shady. I saw him at the ceremonial weigh-ins, and he looked like he rehydrated okay. He was making some, fun and jokes on the scale for the ceremonial weigh-in. So I kept that Brian Battles slip in. It's kind of hard to also cash out slips, I guess, for someone like me in premium. So I kept that slip in, Battle moneyline. Kind of upset that I didn't put more on the Pantoja side of this fight, but Pantoja's moneyline was also in that parlay, and Pantoja just proved that UFC level comp is just absolutely different. People could say Kai landed a few good shots, but that's just what Pantoja is. He knows he can rely on his chin. Maybe one day his chin gives out, but that day was not last weekend. So Pantoja makes it look easy, eats a few good shots from Kai Sakura, but gives him his own, drops Kai Sakura in the first round, gets Kai Sakura down, and submits him. So 0.5 units. That cashed in 0.46 units of net profit on that bet. Shavkat and Movsar Evloev, that was another 1 unit bet that I placed. So quite a few units on Evloev this weekend. I'm not going to lie, in this Shavkat Evloev parlay, I was much more worried about Shavkat. I was pretty confident on him early on, but as the week went by, did get a little bit more nervous about Shavkat, which kind of proved to be true. That fight, in my opinion, was pretty close. Even though that Shavkat, clearly won 3 out of the 5 rounds, the rounds he did win were very close rounds, and one moment in those rounds could have kind of changes the shift of that fight. So interesting fight, but we get the money, 1 unit cashed in for 0.97 units of net profit, and then our only loss was Cody Durden's money line. You saw what Cody Durden did to Joshua Van in round 1. My thought process was essentially that he could do that for 3 rounds, but he clearly gassed out. Good work for Joshua Van. He looked really good in that fight, and yeah, lost half a unit there, but in total, 4.5 units in and 2.65 units of net profit cash in for UFC 310. After 2 essential loss weeks in a row, realistically, UFC 309 was a break-even week. 0.06 units were lost, so nothing was really lost, but we had a 1.45 unit loss on the last UFC Macau Fight Night card. So it's good to bounce back. We're now profitable. 8 out of the last 10 cards, 1 break-even card and 1 lost card. So premium's doing absolutely fire. If you guys do want to check it out, it's $20 a month on kopicks.win. And you can definitely join our Discord and message me in the Discord. You can DM me as well. Ask me any questions you have. Happy to answer that. And yeah, let's jump into the picks and predictions for the last card of 2024. All right, so to kick off the prelims, we have Josefine Knutsson versus Piera Rodriguez. I'm not going to lie, I don't really give a fuck about this fight. I can't really care about women's MMA after UFC Macau, with Kong Wang losing as a minus 800 favorite, and, Shao Kahn Fang losing as a minus 300 favorite, who was minus 2,000 going into the 3rd round, just getting knocked out by someone who's half doctor, half MMA fighter. Pretty insane. Yeah, just to break this down, like I said, I will realistically not be placing any action on women's MMA. I kind of learned my lesson over UFC Macau. maybe for some really high-level fights, but definitely not a fight like this. I'm going to go ahead and pick Piera Rodriguez to win this fight, though. I think that, Josefine Knutsson, she's obviously undefeated. She's 8-0, and she's a very dynamic striker. She's going to be really good on the feet, definitely better than Piera Rodriguez, much better than Piera Rodriguez on the feet. But I think that, Rodriguez can be pretty aggressive. She does have good takedowns. She does actually go for the takedowns quite a bit. And I think that Knutsson can get taken down as well. So I just think that someone like Piera Rodriguez is just going to outdog Josefine Knutsson. This probably come down to a close decision, maybe a split decision. I think Rodriguez will, mix in takedowns. Knutsson will have some good moments on the feet, so it's going to be kind of hard to judge. Kind of like wherever the judges decide to, give a lot of the stock in the rounds too. But I'm going to say Rodriguez will get the nod on the cards. I think that she's going to look more aggressive, kind of be the one pushing the pace in the fight. And yeah, I'm going to think that the judges kind of lean her way. But like I said, not going to place action on a fight like this. I definitely learned my lesson. And yeah, we'll move on to the next one. All right, next fight on the card, we got Davey versus Ramon Tavares. This is a pretty interesting matchup. I think that the odds have been also pretty interesting for this fight. It's basically been a pick and fight the entire week, but Davey Grant has had some time as a favorite. He is a slight favorite right now. Before this, Ramon Tavares was a slight favorite, so interesting line movement here. Basically a pick and fight, and I can kind of understand why. We have Davey Grant, who's the better mixed martial artist. He's essentially a grappler early on in his career, but he has found some good hands throughout his career. But he is 38 years old, almost 39 years old going into this matchup. And then on the other side, we have Ramon Tavares, who's 30 years old, coming off a win over Series CD. I mean, Series CD in his last performance was kind of ass. So he still has a win over Series CD. It was a split decision, though, close fight. And he's 30 years old, so he's going to be 8 to 9 years younger than Davey Grant in this matchup. And he's going to have the much cleaner boxing. That's kind of going to be his main weapon. His boxing is really good. He's also hard to take down. So I think that I'm going to lean Ramon Tavares to win this fight. It's going to be hard to take him down. And with the fight staying standing, I think Davey Grant's going to have the more range of weapons. But I think Ramon Tavares' boxing is just on another level where he's just kind of lean on his boxing a lot. And I think he can do that against a really old, or not really old, but an aging Davey Grant in this matchup. So I'm going to go with the younger fighter. I'm going to go with the better striker. I'm going to go with Ramon Tavares. Probably gets it done by decision. And yeah, we'll move on to the next one. Up the card, we have Miranda Maverick versus Jamey-Lyn Horth. I'm going to go with Miranda Maverick in this matchup. But once again, this is a women's MMA fight that I cannot care less about. I personally will not be putting money down on this fight. But I think that Miranda Maverick potentially could be a safe spot to put your money in this weekend. I think that on the feet, Jamey-Lyn Horth is probably the better in space, in range type of striker. But I just don't think that's kind of how Miranda Maverick fights. I think while they are standing up, Maverick is going to want to get into Jamey-Lyn Horth's face, and if she does, I don't think Horth is going to do well under that type of pressure. Also, considering the fact that this fight probably doesn't stay standing up, Horth can get taken down pretty easily, and Maverick does have the grappling to get her down and kind of have her way with her on the ground. So I also see Maverick, mixing in the takedowns. She definitely should. I don't see why she would not mix in the grappling in this matchup. And if she does, that opens up the striking even more for her. So wherever this fight is, I think Maverick can kind of dominate Jamey-Lyn Horth here. I think the odds do make sense. So, I mean, potentially it could be safe. Me personally, I'm going to stay away from women's MMA for a little bit, but I'm going to pick Miranda Maverick to get this one done. And yeah, let's move on to the next one. All right, next fight on the card is pretty nice. We have Miles Johns versus Felipe Lima. I'm actually pretty excited for this fight. Both of these guys are pretty entertaining fighters. We got Miles Johns, who has a wrestling background, but does have a bunch of power in his hands. He does throw that overhand pretty well, and that overhand is dangerous if it lands. So, cool guy. He can stay up, standing. He can definitely go to the ground with you as well. And then we got Felipe Lima, very similar, but I think Felipe Lima will have the striking edge. I think he's going to be faster. He might not necessarily have the power edge in this matchup, but he's going to be faster. He's going to be more technical. I think he can light Miles Johns up on the feet. He's just going to have to worry about that overhand coming back his way. And then on the other hand, I think Felipe Lima is probably the more slick grappler, but Miles Johns is the more better pure wrestler. So it's going to be interesting if Miles Johns comes with a pure wrestling heavy game plan. We did see Felipe Lima a little bit on bottom position in his fight against Muhammad Naimov. But I just don't see Miles Johns coming in here and sitting on Felipe Lima for 3 rounds. I think Lima's too skilled to kind of just accept bottom and be there letting Miles Johns kind of run away with the fight, winning minutes. I don't think Felipe Lima is going to allow that. I actually like Felipe Lima a lot in the spot. I think that Lima can definitely get to work on the feet. Like I said, he's going to have to worry about that overhand, but aside from that, he's going to get to work on his feet. And I think as Felipe Lima gets to work on his feet, Miles Johns is then going to be forced into using his wrestling. I think in that, he's going to make a mistake Felipe Lima can sprawl well. He can scramble well. And I wouldn't be surprised if Lima can wrap up a sub somewhere in those, desperate Miles Johns wrestling encounters. And I definitely think that Felipe Lima's striking is going to be what's going to cause some of the desperate wrestling from Miles Johns. And if he does do that, I think he can definitely get caught in a submission, especially if he does it late. You can see Miles Johns slow down a little bit late in fights. So if this is like a late round 2, early round 3, he does some desperate wrestling, definitely see someone like Felipe Lima being smart enough, being skilled enough to wrap up a sub, find something good there. So I think Lima's going to win the minutes on the feet. And I think that unless Johns comes in with an absolute crazy wrestle-heavy game plan and has just game planned perfectly for someone like Felipe Lima, I think Lima is just going to be too skilled. He's going to be able to get this fight done. And yeah, I think a sneaky sub is probably what's going to happen. Up the card, we have Sean Woodson versus Fernando Padilla. This is going to be a pretty interesting matchup. I like Sean Woodson in this fight. I think that Sean Woodson has a deep boxing background as well. And I think Sean Woodson's very rangy, 78 inches of reach to Padilla's 76 inches of reach. And Padilla is generally a pretty rangy guy himself, but he's finding himself in a matchup with someone who's a bit more rangy than him. Woodson's also really good at maintaining that range. I think someone like Padilla is going to want to come in, box, some dirty boxing, some close striking, hop in the pocket. I think Woodson's going to be able to keep him out of that pocket if he wants to because of his range management. I think on the ground, Padilla is probably the more dangerous opponent out of the two of them, but I just don't think he has the takedowns to take Sean Woodson down. I think Woodson has pretty decent takedown defense. In this matchup, I think, Woodson keeps it standing. He keeps it in his wheelhouse, and he's just going to have to win a boxing match against someone like a Fernando Padilla, who I think, he can do against. Definitely see him kind of point fighting his way to a decision here. If there is a finish in this matchup, I do think it's on the Padilla side. Definitely, I think if you want to play like an inside the distance Padilla, decision, no action, that could be a decent bet. But when it comes to just straight up picking who wins, I definitely think this, Woodson could take this guy to a decision, just outland him on the feet, just, be a bit elusive, move around, stay out of his range. If he does try to come inside, just break it up, go back into his own range and keep it kind of safe. I think Woodson's going to be able to do that, and I think he gets it done. So, yeah, we're going to go with Sean Woodson, and we'll move on to the next one. The next fight on the card is Joel Alvarez versus Drakkar Klose. I'm pretty excited for this matchup. I love a Joel Alvarez fight. Joel Alvarez is a nasty fighter. He's basically like a Charles Oliveira. He's absolutely destructive on the feet, crazy good Muay Thai. And if you take him to the ground, he's dangerous everywhere, great jiu-jitsu. The one issue with someone like a Joel Alvarez is a very similar issue with someone like a Charles Oliveira. If you do like a super high-pressure wrestling, obviously with someone like Oliveira, that only works if you're the best of the best in the division, like Arman or Islam Makhachev. But with Joel Alvarez, he can get taken down. He did lose to Arman Tsarukyan. Arman Tsarukyan, obviously an amazing wrestler. But, in general, you can see Joel Alvarez being taken down. So someone like Drakkar Klose does mix stuff up pretty well as well. Drakkar Klose can potentially have power on the feet, and he has a few takedowns per fight. So interesting matchup. I do think Drakkar Klose can go and get some takedowns, but every minute this fight stays standing, I don't think someone like Joel Alvarez even gives a shit about getting taken down because he's so dangerous. So I think that Joel Alvarez is going to spam strikes. He's going to look absolutely destructive on the feet. And then when Drakkar Klose does go in and shoot, can Drakkar Klose, hold him down there, have enough minutes on the ground and, dish out some damage. But I think that, the control time is going to be hard to get with how dangerous Alvarez is. He's going to keep throwing up subs. It's going to be interesting. I think there's a few fights on this card, like the Felipe Lima one I just broke down, this Joel Alvarez one, and, a bunch of other ones on this card where it just kind of comes down to, like, if the wrestler can just sit there and hold him, but the other fighter is way more skilled. This is one of those scenarios, and I like Drakkar Klose. I think Drakkar Klose is actually a good fighter. When I say way more skilled, I think someone like Joel Alvarez just has insane skills. The only way to really beat him is to just absolutely shut down his attacks, which is just kind of hold him and be like, no, you're not doing anything. So I like Joel Alvarez a lot in this spot. I'm a pretty big fan of Spanish fighters in general. But yeah, like I said, unless Drakkar Klose can hold him down, which I don't see happening, Joel Alvarez is going to be dangerous every minute of this fight. I think he does find a finish. Actually, maybe not. I think Drakkar Klose is pretty durable, though, so maybe it does go all the way, but who knows? Alvarez, super dangerous opponent. I'm going to pick him. I do like him in the spot, and yeah, let's move on to the next one. Next fight on the card, we got Michael Johnson versus Ottman Azaitar. I'm going to go with Ottman, the underdog, to win this fight. I think that, Michael Johnson is 38 years old. His chin has been tested a bunch of times. We have someone like Ottman Azaitar who's going to come in there and try to take your head off. He might not be the most technical mixed martial artist. Michael Johnson probably has more skills. But, Michael Johnson, like I said, 38 years old, been fighting his entire life versus just someone who's going to be dangerous, come out there and just try to just go in and take your head off. It's a scary pick. Michael Johnson's chin has been cracked. I'm going to go with the more dangerous guy here. I'm going to keep it pretty short. There's not really much to this fight aside from the fact that, yeah, Johnson's a better fighter, but does he have the durability to stand in there against someone who's going to come in and just be an absolute berserker? So I'm going to go with Ottman to win this fight. I think that he can go and crack Michael Johnson's chin. This matchup does kind of make sense for him. He is, looking for some wins. He hasn't won in a few years. So he's on a 2-loss streak, though. He's just been a little bit inactive on the Azaitar side. He lost to Matt Frivola. Frivola is pretty good. I don't think that's really bad. And then he lost to Francisco Prado, which he did get knocked out. He didn't get knocked out cold or anything in that fight, and Prado is pretty good. So I'm not really too low on Azaitar after those 2 losses. And we have Michael Johnson, who's been alternating wins and losses. He's coming off a win, so that means he's probably ending up being due for a loss. So we're going to go with Ottman, just, find the chin, crack Michael Johnson, and yeah, we'll move on to the next one. All right, so to kick off the main card, we got Navajo Stirling versus Tuko Tokkos. Maybe I butchered that name, but yeah, we got Navajo Stirling in his UFC debut, super hyped up, city kickboxing guy, has shown really, really effective striking in his last few fights, but he is only 5-0, so fairly, young in his MMA career in general, but he does have a deep kickboxing background. He is really good on the feet, like I said, very effective striking, and for a Navajo Stirling fight, you're essentially going to be looking at one of those fighters that will do really well standing up and just trying not to get taken down. So maybe once he fights a really good wrestler, that's something to check for, but I don't think this is the matchup where that matters. Navajo Stirling should get this one done, unless Tuko Tokkos can hold him on the ground for 3 rounds, which I don't think he can do. He is also a city kickboxing guy, Navajo Stirling, and they tend to have good takedown defense in general. So we're going to go with Navajo Stirling. He should be able to keep the fight standing, and if he does keep the fight standing, it's going to be an absolute nightmare for his opponent. So yeah, Navajo Stirling, I think he probably gets a knockout, to be honest. His striking is just absolutely clean, and unless, like I said, some insane wrestling comes out from his opponent, which I don't see happening, he should be able to get it done. So Navajo Stirling by knockout is probably what's going to happen. Now, next fight on the card, we got Adrian Yanez versus Daniel Marcos. I think this is a pretty interesting matchup. We're about to see a pretty good striking fest in this fight. I mean, maybe Daniel Marcos sometimes will randomly mix in a takedown, but Adrian Yanez is 100% takedown defense. He's also never gotten a takedown in the UFC as well. So assume this fight kind of stays standing. Both these guys trust their striking. Both these guys have found success with their striking. I don't see why they would deviate from that. They should be, confident in what they bring to the table on the feet. And that's what I kind of see happening in this matchup. I do think that it's going to be a striking fight. And when it comes to that, I think it's going to be pretty interesting. Now, Adrian Yanez is more hittable, but he also does throw a little bit more volume. So maybe it kind of cancels out, but I do think the striking defense of Daniel Marcos is what I'm really looking at in this matchup. I think his striking defense is a bit better. He doesn't get hit as much. And while he still does get hit quite a bit, it's less than Yanez. But on the other hand, Yanez is going to bring the power to this fight. So very, very close matchup. Very interesting. I don't agree with the line. I think this fight should basically be pick 'em. What you're basically picking against is someone who hits harder but gets hit a little bit more, but also does have a decent enough chin versus someone who doesn't have power, like crazy power at least, or not at least one punch power is what I think of. Maybe it's power in like a bunch of volume, but not that one punch knockout power, but does have really a bit more crisp striking when it comes to the matchup. So interesting. Like I said, I think it should be a pick 'em fight. I'm going to pick Daniel Marcos purely because I think he's a little bit crisper on the feet. And like I said, that striking defense is what I'm looking at in this matchup. But I don't see why Adrian Yanez can't just come in and get the bigger moments in the fight. Kind of just, yes, he will get hit more, but not be fazed by someone like Daniel Marcos' strikes. It's going to be very interesting. I'm going to pick Daniel Marcos. I think this fight is going to be super close. I was really hoping we got a 1.5 round line, but it seems like there's a 2.5 round line for this fight. So a little bit shady there. A bet that I think is cool for this matchup, not a bet that I've taken yet, but something that I think is kind of interesting, is Adrian Yanez inside the distance and decision, no action. So if it does go the distance, then your bet voids. But if there's a finish, I think it's going to be on the Yanez side. So you go Yanez by finish, and if decision, no action. Because I don't think Marcos is going to pose a crazy threat to someone like Yanez. I think Yanez is going to be quick. He's going to be fast. He might get hit a bunch, but I think he does land with the bigger power. Very, very close fight. I don't think you bet on this aside from, maybe that spot I just mentioned. I think that's a decent spot. It's plus money. It could potentially just void if it goes all the way. But I think if there's a finish, it is on the Yanez side. But I'm going to pick Marcos to win. I think Marcos does keep it a little bit more crisp. I think he edges it out on the scorecards here. Great fight, but I'm going to roll with Marcos, and yeah, let's move on to the next one. All right, next fight on the card, we got Vitor Petrino versus Dustin Jacoby. This is a pretty good matchup for Vitor Petrino. Vitor Petrino is 11-1. He was 11-0 until his last fight against Anthony Smith. He got guillotined in that fight, going in for a takedown and kind of fraud checked him. But now he's 11-1, and I think this is a good matchup for him to get back on the hype train a little bit. He does have really good striking. He is also making wild improvements in the grappling. And I think that's kind of what's going to be the key factor in this matchup. We know who Dustin Jacoby is. Dustin Jacoby is going to be the older fighter. He is a kickboxer, and we're not going to see the same type of submission threat from Dustin Jacoby. So I think Vitor Petrino, realistically, his path of least resistance in this matchup is going to be through the grappling, and I think he definitely just has the tools to get it done. So I think that Vitor Petrino gets back in the win column. I think he gets back on the hype train just a little bit, and yeah, this should be a good matchup for him stylistically. The grappling is what's going to get it done. Maybe a sub, but ideally I think this fight goes to decision. All right, now up the card, we got Manel Kape versus Bruno Silva. This division, man, is just kind of cooked. Pantoja's been clearing it out. We don't really know what to do with Pantoja, and fights like this might just determine who just gets thrown into a title picture, because that's just kind of how it's going to work. It's going to be hard for the UFC to make more events with Royval and Moreno up there in the title picture, even though they probably deserve it more. And the issue with that is simply just that we've just seen Pantoja beat them like multiple times now. So I would look for someone like a Manel Kape to be in a position who's maybe 1 or 2 wins away, even though he is coming off a loss to Mokaev. Mokaev is no longer with the promotion. I don't think that's going to matter much, especially with Mokaev being out of the promotion. So outside of that Mokaev loss, his last loss was in 2021 to Mateus Nicolau, and then before that it was to Alexander Pantoja, which is interesting. But I think that someone like Manel Kape, someone who is fairly marketable, is probably going to be someone who's like a win or 2 away from a title picture, and I think he knows that. I definitely think he's going to come into this fight looking to get the win. I mean, not that he wouldn't do that anyways, but I think there's a real good reason for him to go get this win. I think he can definitely be in a title picture. Slightly undeserved, like I said, but that is something to think about. And then Bruno Silva on the other side. Bruno Silva's good. He's kind of decent everywhere. He's probably more well-rounded than Kape, you could say, potentially. And he mixes it up more. I just don't think that the difference in him mixing it up is as big as, just the difference in Kape's clean technical striking, which is what it's going to come down to. I don't think that Silva is going to be able to take Kape down over and over again or anything like that, especially with Kape coming off a camp to fight someone like Mokaev. He will have his wrestling, tidied up, and I don't think Bruno Silva is going to be the person to go in there and test that much. So Silva's going to kind of be stuck in a striking match with Kape. Kape's going to be technical. I don't think Kape's going to dominate this or anything. He's probably just going to point fight, be technical, maybe have a big moment somewhere in there, but ideally it's going to be Kape by decision. I think that's what's going to happen. I think, you could see Kape in a potential title picture after this fight. In the co-main event, we got Cub Swanson versus Billy Quarantillo. This is a pretty interesting matchup. I mean, kind of a random-ass matchup, to be honest, but I do like it. I really like Cub Swanson as a fighter. He is 41, but I am going to pick him to win against Billy Q this weekend. I think that, this is going to be a pretty close dogfight on the feet. I do think this fight actually goes to decision. I don't think anyone gets finished in this matchup. The only problem with Cub Swanson is he is 41, but to be honest, he's been fairly active. He fought 5 months ago, lost a split decision to Andre Fili. I personally thought he won that fight. I did have him to win, so maybe I'm biased, but I watched it again, and I definitely do think that Cub Swanson won that matchup, but it was too close to kind of call it a robbery. But like I said, it's 5 months ago. He did do pretty well. He was 40 years old at the time. Now he's 41. But it doesn't seem like a washed 41 to me. It seems like he's still got a little bit of, pep in his step. I think he can definitely keep the pace on someone like Billy Q. I think he's just going to be the more clean boxer, go up there, get in his face. I think we can kind of see a vintage performance out of Cub Swanson this weekend. At least that's what I'm thinking. So I'm going to go with Cub Swanson to beat Billy Q this weekend. I think it's going to be a gritty fight, close decision probably. I'm probably staying away from this on the betting lines, but I like Cub Swanson. Maybe I'm a bit biased because I really do like him as a fighter. And yeah, we'll move on to the next one. And in the main event, we have Colby Covington versus Joaquin Buckley in a 5-round fight. Pretty important to the welterweight division in general. I definitely think I'm pretty curious as to why Colby Covington did accept this matchup, to be honest. We've kind of painted Colby Covington as someone who's kind of just a rank holder. He doesn't want to fight any, contenders. He wants to be in title fights and maybe not necessarily earn them. At least that's me. I'm kind of a Colby Covington hater. I'll say that off the bat. And in his last performance, it was super lackluster against Leon Edwards. We didn't see the Colby Covington we're used to seeing, the high-pressure fighter, the one that will just grind you down and beat you up just through just insane work ethic in the octagon. That's the Colby Covington we're used to seeing. We did not see that in his fight against Leon Edwards. And here's the issue with someone like Colby Covington. while he might have had decent fights with Usman, his wins in the last few years are a Tyron Woodley in 2020, and that Tyron Woodley was on his way out. I think he had one more fight against Vicente Luque after that, and he was out of the UFC. So he's already on a little bit of a skid. And then Jorge Masvidal, and I'm telling you guys, Jorge Masvidal is not that good. Obviously, he had the knee highlight on Ben Askren. Then he beats Nate Diaz. Then he loses to Usman twice, loses to Colby Covington, then loses to Gilbert Burns. Before that, he had lost to Stephen Thompson, Damian Maia. These are all good fighters, but it just proves to you that Jorge Masvidal is never on that level. And like that's like the type of win that Colby Covington has. And after he loses to Leon Edwards, I think someone like Joaquin Buckley is super dialed in right now. This is his 4th fight of the year, so he's extremely active. He's going to be, comfortable in the octagon. He's coming off that win over Stephen Thompson. We had to kind of fight from behind. He was losing that fight to Stephen Thompson because he wasn't able to get the takedowns as easy early on. And then, he comes in with that absolutely insane right hook to knock out Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. And in this matchup, it's going to be the opposite. He's probably not going to look to wrestle much. If we see Colby Covington come with that insane pressure, we're going to kind of see Joaquin Buckley's cardio be tested a bit. I think this is his first 5-round fight, if I'm not mistaken. So he's going to be in a 5-round fight for the first time. Someone like Colby is hard to put away. So, you're going to have to go all 5 rounds with someone like Colby. Realistically, he is super hard to put away. So his cardio is going to come into question. But, I actually think Joaquin Buckley can go and pick up those first 3 rounds. I definitely think Joaquin Buckley is not going to death gas. I think he's too locked in. He's definitely shown a lot of heart. He's fighting 4 times this year. Doesn't seem like something someone in that type of mindset should be going out and doing. He should definitely go in and have the cardio 4 or 5 rounds. He's not going to go in and think, I'm going to get Colby out of there quick, because no one really does get Colby out of there quick. So he should know that he's going to have to go 5 rounds here, most likely. I'm not worried about the cardio. In my opinion, I think that's something that should be on top of his mind. But it just comes down to what type of Colby Covington we see. I don't think Colby Covington has it anymore, personally. Colby Covington is now, 36 years old, and not just being 36, but just being on top in, the title picture, top of the rankings for so long. I think that does take a mental toll of like, how long am I going to be here? Am I realistically done? Losing to Usman, and then we get Leon in, losing to Leon. The Leon performance was horrible. And then we have a Joaquin Buckley who's 30 years old, so 6 years younger, fighting 4 times this year, just absolutely dialed in, absolutely locked in. I'm going to take Joaquin Buckley in this situation every time. I just don't think Colby has it, like I said. If he does come and do all that pressure, I think Buckley still might win. So interesting stuff. I'm going to take Buckley by a decision here. I know that a lot of people might think he's going to win by knockout. On Tapology, it's actually 83% of the Buckley picks are by knockout. I find that pretty interesting. Maybe it's something super late, but I think Buckley actually wins by decision. I do think he wins some rounds early. I think he's going to have to conserve some gas, though, for late. Maybe Colby Covington does pick up a round 4 or a round 5. That could easily happen, but I'm going to pick Buckley. I like Buckley in this spot. And yeah, that does it for all the picks for UFC Tampa. And that does it for all the picks and predictions for UFC Tampa. This is the last card of 2024, so I appreciate everyone who's, early in on our Knockout Picks community. Our premium has been doing extremely well, up over 24 units in the last 10 cards. 8 of these cards were profitable. 1 was break even. We did lose on UFC Macau. So, yeah, definitely appreciate all the early support. We've closed out 2024 strong. We'll do one more card here, get a bunch more profit in from UFC Tampa, and then we're going to go into 2025 strong. So, definitely appreciate everyone who's joined up. Check out our Discord. It's free. Check out our Instagram. We have some cool content going up there. And, if you do want to check out premium, it's $20 a month on kopicks.win. And, yeah, I'll see you guys in the new year.